When America started bombing Iraq, one of the areas they were bombing was actually some of the fiber optic cables that were put in place by Huawei. But as I have gotten older, the one quality I am looking for is somebody who is God-fearing. I've really been struggling to find blouses that are on the high street but are good quality. I would say this is one of the better ones I've gotten, and it's from H&M. Yeah, a lot of the time when I get blouses, they feel really cheap, and I think part of the issue is when I was making way more money, I was buying these really like luxury blouses that were like $200 each, and the quality was just so amazing, and it's very difficult to get similar quality for a much cheaper price. Although I will say I think I found a few. This is one of them that I think it's pretty decent. Zara, I hate Zara. I like shirts that are 100% cotton, and Zara, you can't find anything that doesn't have polyester, so I don't even look at Zara anymore. And then Aritzia has nice things, but they're very expensive. Like, I was looking at their cotton blouses and they were $99, I think, and it didn't even look like it was going to be that good. So I do like trying to buy things that are more sustainable, but I think the biggest thing is just buy items that you really like, so you're going to wear over and over again, and then also things that are good quality. And I'm now at a stage where I really want to pick up sewing so I can start learning how to fix my items which have holes on them. For example, I have this really nice cashmere sweater from Aritzia, which was like a really beautiful fit. It was this beautiful chocolate brown. I just loved everything about it, but it got a hole in it, and because of that I haven't bought more cashmere from Aritzia because it's like it was a little bit too expensive to get a hole that easily. So I want to start learning how to fix some of those things so that then I can make my items last a little bit longer. I wore makeup today for the first time in a really long time, and I feel like it looks pretty good. This is almost entirely drugstore, so I'm trying to see if I can get like a drugstore makeup routine that I like. I was going to do lashes, but I was feeling a little bit lazy. I'm going to sit down because I want to sit down and be comfy. So Christmas is over. I hope people enjoyed the holidays. I feel like the holidays can either be like a really exciting time, but they also can be a really sad and sort of scary or disappointing time. You know, for people who have lost family members, maybe you used to have a certain family tradition and you don't have that because the person's gone or doesn't live nearby. So I think the holidays can just be a difficult time for people in general. So I hope people are okay. I have been using my time off to do some reading and to watch a lot of movies. I have not been in a movie watching mode for a while, and so far I think almost every day I've like started the day by watching a movie. So I've been on a bit of a Martin Scorsese gangster film binge. So on Boxing Day I finished watching The Irishman. That one I watched over I think 2 or 3 days, and it was much better than I remembered actually. A lot more historical aspects to it that I thought were quite interesting. Like, I did know Jimmy Hoffa obviously was in it, but understanding a little bit more about the Teamsters, and then also the election of JFK and the supposed mob ties, that side I didn't remember, and I did find that all quite enlightening. Then after that I watched Casino, which I used to really like, but rewatching it I was like, oh, I don't think I like this as much as I thought. Much more violent than I remembered, and I think after watching The Irishman it just felt like there was much less of a message to it. And then yesterday I watched Goodfellas, which is a classic. Again, The Irishman has more of a message, but Goodfellas just has some really incredible shots, which are, it's a classic. It's a classic for a reason. And then after that I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna start The Sopranos, and that'll be my like mobster fix, and I'm gonna move on to slightly different types of movies. I am now much more aware of what I'm looking for when it comes to looking for a life partner. And part of that has been spending a lot of time trying to understand what God's intention was when it came to marriage, what a husband's purpose is, what a wife's purpose is, what your purpose as a parent is to be. So this is never something I would have said before because I always have been like a little bit unsure about religion. But as I've gotten older, the one quality I am looking for is somebody who is God-fearing. And by that I mean somebody who believes there is a higher being and believes and understands in being submissive to somebody outside of themselves. their purpose and their reason for being here is to be submissive to God's will for their life, as opposed to them creating their own will for their life. And also related to that is this idea within Christianity, at least, of a husband loving his wife the way Christ loved the church. And if you think about what that really means, Jesus Christ sacrificed his life, like literally gave his life for the church, which then means a husband is supposed to love his wife in a very sacrificial way. And I really am looking for someone who is able to love me in that way, because I think that that's the only way a long-term marriage is going to work. It's going to be successful. It needs to be that sort of sacrificial love. And I'm not just focusing on the negative sides of like all of these obligations that Christianity has for men. It has similar obligations for women, which I'll be honest have been very difficult for me to accept. Like this whole idea of having to be submissive to a man, I find really difficult, because I feel very blessed that like I have been given the gift of wisdom, I think beyond my years, which has allowed me to understand sort of like things or paths to take without really knowing why. So then it's difficult to be submissive to somebody else. But I think because of that, like having that in mind when it comes to looking for a life partner, I'm only interested in dating somebody who I am willing to be submissive to. And by that I mean it has to be someone who's very intelligent, has to be somebody who knows more than I do in order for me to let them lead me. I can't just be submissive to somebody who, you know, let's say believes everything that Donald Trump says, is not inquisitive, is not questioning things, is not challenging things. And it's quite easy to know whether somebody is being authentic or just trying to sort of deceive you in that way. So yeah, having those factors, having those qualities, and then also obviously looking at what are the qualities that one should have as a Christian: patience, love, long-suffering, all of those things can also be helpful in terms of understanding what qualities to look for in a partner. So I really implemented that in this journey of looking for someone to spend my life with, and it's been helpful. I've definitely gone on way less dates than I've ever gone on in my life, but that's not a bad thing. There are so many other positive things going on in my life that I really am only willing to make time for somebody who it feels right. Like it's a sacrifice to allow someone into my life, and I don't want to sacrifice for somebody who's not really worth the time. Anyway, hopefully that's helpful. I feel like a lot of people are really sad about being single at this stage in their life, and it's definitely not what I imagined for myself. I was someone at a young age who thought I was going to get married and have kids really young, but that didn't happen, and that's okay. I am very much trying to go according to what I've been given, and if it was not in my cards to be married at a young age, then that's okay. And I don't know, maybe it's not even in my cards to be married at all. I hope that I get to be married and have kids, because I feel like it's a desire I've had on my heart for a very long time. But if that's not what God has planned for me, then that's also okay. So I would love to hear from people if they are struggling. It really has been a journey for me when it comes to dating and online dating, and wondering sometimes if I'm like too picky, but then working in the work that I do and realizing there are a lot of implications that come with being married to the wrong person, and so not wanting to rush into that just because of time. Hello, happy Friday. I am just getting ready to head out. Later today, I'm going to meet up with one of my friends who I haven't seen in a while. We're going to go to the AGO. In terms of reading, I am still reading Origins of Political Order by Fukuyama. I am just about, or I guess I'm just starting the section which looks at the creation of the Chinese state. I'm really trying to read it slowly because there is so much information. I am also reading a book on Revelation by Elaine. It is quite interesting, actually. It's looking at the historical time period when Revelation was written and how a lot of the things that this John Patmos was writing in Revelation was about the Roman Empire. So I'm interested to see how these critiques of the Roman Empire have now been taken by Christians to apply to loads of different situations. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to head out now, and I will see you soon. terms of reading, I actually have not done a lot of reading over this past week. I think partly it's just like getting back into the swing of work, but also the Fukuyama book is very, very dense, and I really don't want to just skim through it. I'm trying to get as much out of it as possible. So slowly but surely working through it, but I'm about 100 pages into it. So I don't know if I will finish it in January. I'm currently at a part where he is outlining the creation of the Chinese state and the different dynasties within China. So very fascinating. I did pick up a book this week, and it was a book that I have had my eye on for a while. I have been reading through the Bible and just like trying to understand different areas of the Bible. And one book I've always found really complicated is the book of Hebrews. And towards the beginning of the book of Hebrews, the author talks about the angels and the difference between the angels and Jesus. Anyway, it's this really interesting theological exploration of angels, which I myself have never really done a deep dive into. So then I fell down this rabbit hole looking into it. Based on recommendations on the academic biblical subreddit, I came across this author, and I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I can't pronounce it. And he was recommended as somebody to read if you are interested in learning more about angels. So this book is called Angelmorphic Christology. It is essentially just like a history of angels within the Old Testament, New Testament, and apocryphal texts. It's been really fascinating. Definitely a reference book, so not reading it from beginning to end. I was looking at angelmorphic humans because I've been interested in learning more about the prophet Elijah, who's talked about in the Old Testament. Hebrews also has this really interesting exploration of Melchizedek, who's talked about really briefly in the Old Testament. So I also read a bit about that. And then I think where I'm going to go next is looking at the different angels, because I've been reading the book of Daniel, and Daniel talked a lot about the angels. I think it was Gabriel and Raphael. So anyway, picked up this book. I just finished watching one of the Dark Money documentaries. I started it during the work week and essentially was watching a few minutes of it every day. I think that was the best way to work through it because there is so much in that documentary. It was really disappointing looking at the conservative movement to have judges appointed and all of the ways in which the conservatives really, one, used financial corruption to get there, and two, really used a lot of anti-democratic methods to get there also. And then also looking at the corruption of the judges on the Supreme Court. Of course, some famous examples are Clarence Thomas and also Justice Alito, but definitely did a good job of explaining some of the names of people who were very involved in this movement to have these judges appointed and to overturn Roe v. Wade. What I found really disappointing is seeing how many of the people who were involved in this can call themselves Catholics, religious people, and using God to justify their actions. And I always find it really interesting when people who are Christians or Catholics will justify their actions by talking about things in scripture, because when I think of the story and the message of Jesus, Jesus was so focused on healing the sick and helping the poor, and was not focused on, revolution, overturning the Roman government, making sure the laws in the society aligned with Jewish laws. Like, that wasn't his point or his focus. So to say that you are a Christian and then to spend so much of your time trying to have society fit into your norms about life, it just completely blows my mind. Like, I think if you are a Christian or a Catholic and you believe that abortion is a sin and murder, then you just don't do that in your own life. You're not supposed to then force that on other people. So it was really disappointing watching that, actually. Like, when I finished it, I was like, yeah, I can understand why people don't like Christians and why people are so against Christians, because that's really, that whole movement, in my view, is giving Christianity a bad name. And to support somebody like Donald Trump, who was just using that to get elected, it's very Very sad state of affairs. The lighting is working against me, it seems, today, so I think I'm gonna end the vlog there. Or at least I'm going to end today's part of the vlog there. Most of the time I spent reading this morning, I was reading House of Huawei. They were talking about how Huawei was going into Iraq and helping them to build fiber optic cables. When America started bombing Iraq, one of the areas they were bombing was actually some of the fiber optic cables that were put in place by Huawei. And what they are saying is that the cables that were being used prevented the NSA from being able to essentially spy on Iraqi military and understand what their plans were. One part I was reading in the book, which really stood out to me, was we're talking about how America decided to invade Iraq. And because that happened, all of these companies, these telecommunication companies, were like, oh, there's going to be a market for us if America now has taken over Iraq and puts in a leader who is willing to work with America. The sanctions against Iraq are going to be removed, which is going to allow the opportunity for businesses to operate there in a very different way. And just this idea that the invasion of a country, their sovereignty is being attacked. Loads and loads of the people are going to be slaughtered, be murdered because of this invasion. Yet the companies are focused on the potential for their businesses to grow. It just always brings me back to the Divine Comedy, which is why this is one of my favorite books of all time. This vice, this sin of greed, that I found very appalling and disturbing. But such is life. Later this evening, I'm meeting up with a friend from law school, which should be nice. I haven't seen her in such a long time. So I think one of my little projects for the rest of the week, probably like Thursday and Friday, will be to work on reorganizing my bookcase. I think I'm going to get some flowers and just like dress it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go now. So it's 10:41. My day ended up being a little bit different. I went to IKEA, tried out a few mattresses. After that, I went to dim sum with my friend, which was awesome. It was so good. So much food. I definitely ordered too much, but I have leftovers for like the next 3 days, which I'm so excited about. Some of the best pork buns I've ever had in my life. After that, I went to go and visit my mom. She needed her prescription to be picked up, and I just wanted to help her sort of like clean up her space a bit. I kind of had planned to do a little bit of work this evening, like research, but when I ended up going to my mom's, that sort of changed things a bit. So I think instead I'm just gonna come back, get cozy in bed, and then I want to do a bit of reading. I don't know if I'm gonna end the vlog here or not. If I do, adios. If not, see you tomorrow. Just rounding up the vlog. In terms of reading, I am still working through House of Huawei. That one is due back to my library in 5 days, so I do plan to finish it this week, fingers crossed. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. I have just gotten to a part, chapter 20, where it talks about how during the Snowden release of information, he discloses that the NSA had hacked Huawei and companies who had purchased Huawei infrastructure. So I'm going to work through finishing that this week, fingers crossed, if all goes according to plan. I have finally watched the viral video of Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio. She's so funny. I really, really like her. I feel like a lot of people in Hollywood are really uptight, and it feels like they're acting during interviews, like they're very guarded. But she's just so out there, and I love how she just says exactly what everyone's thinking, or a lot of the time not even what we're thinking, and just she makes people feel uncomfortable, and I like people like that. So anyway, I really enjoyed their interview. I feel like Leo is doing his best acting to keep it together. Oh, I think it's full.